What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Halftime Snacks podcast. This show features short interviews that you can listen during the halftime of your favorite sports events. Every Tuesday, I host fun conversations with talented people in the sports industry where we'll learn from their stories, knowledge, and experiences. So go grab your favorite snack and come snack with us. Are you ready? Let's go! Excited to introduce our following guest to the Halftime Snacks. He's an expert in performance marketing, startup strategy, and digital media. Our guest is a partner at Savage Ventures and also acts as a resident growth hacker for their portfolio companies, mostly as their CMO. Savage Ventures is a venture operator that invests, acquires, and operates high growth businesses within different industries, including sports. And this guest is the CEO of Savage Sports, which is the division of Savage Ventures that focuses on sports. And they are also the top sports betting and online gambling marketing affiliate in North America. So it is an absolute pleasure to have him on the Halftime Snacks today. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Zach Litwack. Zach, welcome to the Halftime Snacks.
Thanks, Ronan. Love that intro, man. You actually pronounced my last name right, which is incredible.
Yeah, we were talking about that. I also struggle with that last name thing, but it's good to have you here, Zach. We're gonna get into so much stuff, particularly related to sports betting, growth hacking, scaling startups, and what have you. But before that, we always roll it off with a fun icebreaker. So the one I have for you is, what's your favorite Olympic event to watch, and what do you like about it?
Man, that's tough because honestly, I don't love the Olympic events. I'm a Southern, United States born, raised dude who grew up watching football and baseball. So this is a tough one for me. But if I were to pick one, I'd say I'd say something super competitive like track and field. Like the short sprint races are really fun to watch, and I guess that's kind of my nature. I'd like hill sprints and lifting weights, and I like rigorous but short activity. I don't like long distance running, so I think I'm going to go with the 100-meter sprint.
Nice, nice. I'm guessing that has to do with your personality. So let's figure that out.
Okay.
How about you first tell us a little bit about you, about your background, something that I didn't mention, something about what built you into who you are today, or what you're doing today. What are some of the things in your background that maybe people miss out on and that are important to know to understand who Zach Litwack really is today?
Yeah, well, I was blessed to be born into upper middle class family, maybe the middle class when I was born. So I was never interested in doing what my parents did, which is working 9 to 5 at a large corporation. It was always a huge turnoff to me, and maybe that was part like you just mentioned, like figuring out who I am. I mean, it was definitely some self analysis that went into like why am I doing what I'm doing, and for whatever reason, whether it was environment or genetics, I did not like the idea of going to work a 9 to 5 to a large corporation. I've also realized even more recently that I've just been very passionate about business and building companies and wealth and uh, so yeah, I've never really had a corporate job. It's been super interesting. Out of college, I started a music production company. I thought I wanted to be a recording engineer and producer, and actually I was one at a pretty high level for about 6 or 7 years. Started a business out of college with a couple friends. Ended up selling that business to them and basically paid off debt. And then I was kind of at like a oh crap, what do I do next moment. I knew I didn't want to go back into the music industry, and I luckily found startups. And I found actually my buddy called me and kind of got me off the couch and said, "Hey, Zach, do you want to help me build my startup? I know you just kind of did a startup." I'm like, "Sure." I just started saying yes to everything. And I found myself enthralled with this idea of building technology and scaling companies through technology, whether it's technology enabled or it's actually the technology. And I tried to start, 20 to 30, maybe even more startups, mostly technology enabled, and failed a bunch of times. Had a small success in healthcare tech, and then wound up starting Savage Ventures about 2.5 years ago with a friend of mine named Sam, and now we're hundreds of employees and about $450 million in enterprise value created. So it's been a cool ride. I guess the lesson there is like just if you fail 10,000 times, it only takes one to make it.
Yeah, I love that. But how exactly do you think you found your way into like sports? Was it something that kind of like became more attractive as you start testing? Because it feels like you tested a lot of things, right? You mentioned music. I know you also did something in healthcare. You then, have worked with so many different things. So, like, how exactly sports came to your attention, or you started like kind of getting specific in that niche? Was that like a specific interest of yours, or?
Yeah. Well, so what's interesting is I was always into sports and I was a big sports fan. But as I entered the music industry full time, I kind of lost way of that passion or lost, a sense or feeling for it. And then through technology or through the startup journey for about 6 years before, 7 years before Savage Ventures, I didn't do one sports thing. Everything was in like restaurants. I did a couple restaurant companies, restaurant tech, which it's an industry I'll probably never get back into. Uh, I did healthcare, did a couple of like Airbnb type of marketplaces for real estate, but more on the technology side of that business. And so I hadn't touched sports until when we started Savage Ventures. One of the first companies we launched was this company called Outkick, and it was a sports media company. We joint ventured with this sports personality called Clay Travis, who had a national radio show on Fox Sports News, and he had some very polarizing takes about sports and the sports industry. And we were able to build a company around what he had already started super quickly. And so we did what we really did good at, which is building processes, like implementing our playbook around, a personality or an influencer like Clay. And so we launched a website, we hired contributors, we scaled out a YouTube and a Facebook, and did our social media thing. And one of the interesting findings through that whole process was we found a love for and the potential of the sports betting industry. One of our biggest revenue streams was sports betting, and in fact, during the fall 2020 into spring 2021 football season, we were FanDuel's number one affiliate. Like, we were doing more revenue than the big guys. And so part of that had to do with timing. Part of it has to do with our experimental approach to finding, you know, some people call them growth hacks, but finding, revenue streams that are scalable and then tripling down on those and basically forgetting about the rest. And so and then through that process, I developed a love again for sports, or it was a reminder of how much I love sports. And so as we sold that company, Outkick, to Fox last year. But while we still had Outkick, we actually started to purchase assets in hopes to scale Outkick and, in particular, scale the sports betting revenue side of the house. But we didn't have a chance to do that before Fox purchased it all. It happened super quickly. It was a very fast growing company. In fact, our investment banker said it was one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing company he's ever seen. And so um, we had these assets and we already had, all the infrastructure to market sports betting and online gambling products again. And so we did that this past football season, proved out that we can do this with other brands and doing it, in other mediums. And so we've developed a playbook essentially now for marketing these products online. And as a result, we now have what we've rebranded everything as Savage Sports.
Yeah, yeah. I think, well, we're gonna talk a lot more about scaling and growth and startups. But before that, I I had this question when I was reading, through your LinkedIn and through your information, all the research that I did around you, and something that kind of like gave me the impression, or my perception, is like you're like this like Swiss knife within like a specific particular area within business, which is like scaling and growing, and like, but you're a Swiss knife in terms of like you are doing many things at the same time, right? You're managing the Savage Sports, but you're also acting as growth hacker and CMO for a couple of other companies. So the question in my mind was like, how does this guy make it? Like, how does he manages his workload, or what are some of like the different tasks that he deals on a weekly basis? So maybe share a little bit more around what is a week like for you, or how do you exactly manage all the workload that you do, as doing a little bit for different companies and being there, for many different things.
Oh man, you're hitting home because I just took a week off to think about all of this. So I think I'm going to be somewhat educated in this answer. We've been running really hard at Savage Ventures for a couple years, and at first it was just me and a couple of other partners, and we purchased a couple companies, started Outkick, doing smaller deals, and it was a startup. Really, and when you're doing a startup, you're kind of doing everything. But at some point, you take time to develop infrastructure, and you develop processes. You develop, a formula or a system on how create what we call OKRs, objectives and key results for each business. Then you drill down one more level, and we developed a system to run what I call high tempo testing. So you develop this infrastructure, which is really built on process. And when you do that, you can start to delegate. And delegating is like the hardest thing for it's been the hardest thing for me to learn, or to honestly to do. And what happened was 2.5 years later, I had this feeling of being burnt out, even though I was emotionally and physically super fulfilled with what we're doing at Savage Ventures. And so there was incongruency there. And so I took 10 days off actually, and figured out, well, why there was incongruency, why I was feeling this way. And I started asking myself questions. I've always asked myself questions like, okay, what did I do today and how can I optimize it? But I've never asked myself, what can I do today? How can I optimize it? But what did I do that I shouldn't be doing and that someone else should be doing? And what did I do today that I shouldn't be doing and no one else should be doing? And so this idea of delegating and elevating, I think, or elevate or delegate and elevate up, I think is what it's called in this book Traction, which we're starting to build some other infrastructure off of. Gino Wickman, I think, is the Traction author, and it's a book I read many years ago. But once you get to a certain size, like Savage Ventures has hundreds of employees now, we have some processes built out. We're still, I would say a smaller company, but hundreds of millions of dollars enterprise value created, and so we're at a point now where I need to start delegating up and empowering younger marketers and just younger, business people, whether that be a growth hacker or a video, production manager, whatever, to actually start doing more and more and more, and knowing that they're gonna, make mistakes, but we're gonna be better off for it. And I'm kind of figuring this out, but so I mean, yeah. Long story short, to answer your question, you should be constantly subtracting from your life, whether it's whether it's from business, professional, whatever, or business, personal. Um, with subtraction comes more focus and less stress and more efficiency.
Yeah, I think addition by subtraction is a great concept, and it's funny that you mentioned this because I think it ties down to the next question I was about to ask you. Maybe it already answers it, but essentially my question was like, how does this guy that has so much experience in startups and so much experience about thinking like optimizing scale and growth and like what is his mindset or what is his like framework, his rationale behind like growing, because one might be caught up in thinking that sometimes more is always better, more customers, more employees, more revenues, but sometimes, and in particular like companies, or even like even a bigger community, like not sure, but I think it ties down to like every this mentality of like thinking that more is always better. I wonder what is your mentality, or how's your like framework, your mental framework around optimizing growth and scale. Is it kind of like tied to what you just shared around like your own personal like scale and how you grow yourself?
It's definitely totally, yeah. It's tied. I have this, and it'll, just like anything, it'll be iterative. But the current thinking on like the framework to grow a company quickly and efficiently is timing has to be there. So let's just take the sports betting example. If we tried to market these products and, well, before legislation was passed, right, it just wouldn't be feasible. If we built a website that was trying to rank number one for like, how to bet on sports in the United States, well, that's great. But if we did it in 2014, we probably wouldn't have been in business much longer, because we would have had to wait like 4 years to actually market products against that audience that was visiting our site and doing it illegally offshore. So timing has to be there. With Outkick, timing was there from a sports betting standpoint. It was there from like uh, what was happening in the world, the crazy world we lived in 2020, and the content we were producing was fairly, it was like sports. But you remember what was happening in the sports industry? Like it became political, and so we were right there to like serve thought provoking content to that audience, and we were able to, like, so timing was is part of any equation. So honestly, starting a company really shouldn't be hard if you've got like the basic expertise. Like if it's hard to sell something to somebody, then maybe the timing's just off. Like ask yourself that question. So timing's criteria number one. Now once you have timing and you have what some people call like product market fit or whatever, or in product market fit in my mind is like there are thousands of people that would pay at least $10 a month for your whatever you're offering right off the bat, right? Um, if you have timing, then you need three other things. You need people, so good people to help you, kind of like what I talked about earlier. You can't do everything by yourself, and you might have a lot of hats starting out, but you might be wearing a lot of hats starting out, but you're likely not to get past you know $1 million in revenue just doing it by yourself. And if you do, then you've got a potential unicorn on your hands, or a very efficient business on your hands, either one. And then the second, after you have good people, you need good process. And so I mentioned two of our processes earlier, but we've got objectives and key results. It's how we set goals, and we do that on a yearly, down to quarterly, down to individual scale. And then high tempo testing is our process to run digital marketing and other experiments against those OKRs in a very regimented way. And if you distill it down to just you could if you run more thoughtful experiments than your competitor, if you distill growing a company that way, you'll probably win. Like that's probably okay. And then the third thing is you need technology. Even if you're not a technology company or you're not building technology, you need to enable technology to do things for you. Whether that's you know making something more efficient, or whether it's a tool that acquires users into your platform, whatever it is, like technology needs to enable your business to grow while you're sleeping. Or it could be leveraging the Facebook. It's not quite as good now, but like Facebook's ad platform would be an example of that, leveraging their algorithm to sell your product.
Yeah, and so how exactly does a because I guess you get approached by so many different companies and of course startups that you are either investing on or related to would want your help. So how exactly do you go around like that discovery phase, that like first step in getting to know the company and understanding if their technology is up to speed, if their timing is right, if they have this thing you call product market fit? Like how exactly do you first go about understanding the company before knowing what to do or where to work on? Like what is the what is that? How does that look like?
Yeah, I think, well, Savage Ventures is set up well for somebody that has what I would call product market fit. So we don't really start stuff from scratch. We've done that internally occasionally, but it's not but we like to take stuff like, I'll just keep using the Outkick example because it grew so quickly. And we've got other examples on a more, it's not linear scale, but definitely less of an exponential scale. And there needs to be like some base of audience or base of revenue. Like there needs to be some signals for us in the marketplace that people want to buy this product or go to this website or whatever the case is. And if there are a lot of signals where we can turn the dial, what I call like from 2 to 10 or 1 to 10, like pretty quickly, using all these playbooks we put together, using the people, the processes, and the technology, honestly, that we've put together, then we'll do it. We'll invest in it or acquire it and operate it. Um, then the other thing is there's probably one other like main consideration. We've got certainly some core competencies. I mentioned some of them earlier, but particular verticals where those competencies actually are really well suited for, like digital media being one of them. Scaling websites, building social assets, driving traffic to a website, setting up your editorial process. All that stuff we're really good at. And then the other vertical is like e-commerce, direct to consumer stuff. Like the online business theme is definitely something we'd look for. I don't think we'd ever do like an offline business unless it's totally passive and fun, and we're not expecting a big return for us. So yeah, I mean, those are the two things we would. And for companies that are so small, like they're pre-revenue or they just have a couple of beta users or whatever, I'm like, keep going. I want them to make some mistakes. I want them to learn more before we invest time and energy. It's good for both parties, honestly.
Yeah, and you mentioned something just a little bit earlier about OKRs, which is kind of like the way you guys see objectives and
Key
key
results.
results, right? What is that like? How does that strategy work? How do you find like the most relevant key metrics or set the right objectives? I'm curious because I think that there's so much value in setting your goals. Balaji Srinivasan, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He talks a lot
Hmm.
about like just write them down, just write down your goals. So I wonder like how do you how do you approach that phase?
Yeah, pre like $10 million in revenue, you can approach it this way. It's like my strategy documents are like one page Google Docs, and it's basically like, what is our goal? And early stage companies do not need to be creating longer than a year plan, probably. Like pre $10 million in revenue, I don't think you need to be doing anything longer than a year. In fact, we've had success at the one to, the couple million run rate mark, just doing quarterly goals and not even setting longer term ones, because we're still like learning so much. And the longer we wait, the more a longer term strategy would be informed. I think companies spend way too much time planning before they even have like product in the marketplace. Take that time and actually sell your product to customers, and you'll get that feedback loop a lot faster, which will inform a longer term plan much more accurately than you can pre revenue. But yeah, so we basically, I'll create like we'll create a one page Google Doc that's like, what is our goal, our yearly goal usually, and it's usually tied to a quantitative goal. There's like a quantitative goal, and then there's like a qualitative goal, I guess you can say. So the qualitative goal of Savage Sports would be like to be the number one, sports betting and online gambling media conglomerate in North America. And then the quantitative goal would be like X revenue by X date. And then underneath that, there are priorities and personnel. So what 3 to 5 things are we going to focus on to most affect those two goals? And then who are the people that are actually going to execute against those priorities? And then from there, we bring those priorities into the OKR framework, and those priorities become quantitative key results. Essentially, your key results need to be quantitative. I will do X revenue by X date is a simple way to think about it. And then you assign owners to those key results. And then you drill down one step further. That owner might have like a small team or something that would take pieces of that key result. And then everyone's working together at that point. And then it gets fun. You actually have a clear direction on like what you're working at, what you're prioritizing, and everything else goes away. And you run as many experiments as you can to try to affect the quantitative key results.
Yeah, I love the framework. I want to maybe switch now to a topic that, it's sports betting is something that has been very interesting, at least for me, in terms of like how the market has been behaving, in the last few years, particularly after PASPA in 2018. Um, Maybe hearing it from you, and we could talk about the article that I published very recently on my magazine about the outlook for 2022. But maybe from you, that's it's someone that is sitting in conversations about sports betting on a weekly basis, if not on daily, and that you are getting to look at how things are going from within the inside. What can you tell us? Why has 2022 been a good or a bad year for sports betting? What do you see it happening in the rest of the year? Like, give us your kind of like your insider's take on what sports betting is going through and where is it going, at least in this year.
Yeah, I mean, at the macro level, I think you cited in that article, DraftKings stock and other stocks are down 50ish%. Most of them are down like 50 something percent year to date. That's not really abnormal though in this current market. I mean, we all, at least I say we all, we certainly saw this coming with the way the market was acting last year. It was unsustainable, and we expected a downturn this year, and I think it will last like 12 to 18 months. I think it's going to be like a pretty stereotypical recession cycle, and I love these cycles actually because it washes away. And I say that like I've been through a bunch of them. I've only been through one, and it was like my first year out of college. So I guess I'm not certainly not an expert at it, but I think there's this concept, this just like general philosophy of like washing away, like trimming the fat or like washing away the dirt and or cleansing the palate or cleansing the system or whatever. We certainly needed to do that, and like it was not tenable, what we were doing, and so yes, the sports betting stocks are down quite a bit. It was interesting. I looked at other high growth stocks, companies that were are I call them high growth, like that have massive TAM potential that are growing really quickly but aren't nearly profitable yet. And so I looked at like Uber, and I looked at some other growth stocks like Facebook, even though they are profitable, and just to kind of compare like where the draft how the DraftKings stock, like what was the market sentiment, with DraftKings versus some of these other guys. And what I found is that it was somewhere in the middle. Like it wasn't really bad like a Netflix, but it wasn't really good like a Google. And so um, I I think that there's probably some efficiency, whether that is in the marketing side of the house or whether it's a staff count issue that the sports books need to do. But again, I don't think that's abnormal right now. I think a lot of people were bloated and they were growing super quickly and they had unrealistic expectations on the current state of the market and this feeling that things were going to go on forever. Yeah, and I guess you could look at the crypto market too, which is like the most volatile right now. I think Coinbase is down like 80 or 90% or something like that. And so, yeah, I don't think it's any surprise that DraftKings is down 50 something percent. I think they're at a decent baseline to build off of. Don't see them going much further down, but we'll see. I don't know if we've hit the bottom yet in the market, but I think it's a really young industry too. So I think part of the market sentiment might be like there's just a lot of unknowns here, which is understandable. Like it's really just a 4-ish year old industry. I mean, it's it's in the United States, right? And it's like um, that is a very 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 young company, and so I think that's part of what you're seeing in the price reflection. It doesn't like I don't work for these sports books, but it doesn't seem like their strategy is changing that much. They're continuing forward with their current strategy for the most part. And if you think about these companies too, they are technology and legislation businesses. They're not. Does that make sense? Like they're building technology, but we could look at LinkedIn and look at their headcount ratio, but I'm sure a lot of it is like legal, finance, and I mean these are the legal burden is pretty high. So I think there's going to be a lot of learning curves, just like a company, any 4-year-old industry, is going to have. Um, Personally, I think the market is a lot of fun, and I think it's super young. I mean, if you think about the population in the United States that has access to sports betting, it's still a vast minority, and so I yeah, and then as these companies like start to launch more products, like whether it's poker or casino or something else we're not even thinking of, it's going to be really really exciting to open up these apps and play real money on all sorts of things, like in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't really directly answer your question, other than I'm not surprised at the state of the sports betting industry, at least the state of the public companies, and I'm not surprised at the macroeconomic landscape right now.
And would you say, or would you think there are like what are some catalysts that may be invisible to like the regular investor within the industry that could potentially turn things around for the sports betting space in the next, I don't know, 1 to 3 years?
More states going live, more people betting, more revenue.
Do you think like it's a matter of like building demand?
Yeah, building demand through more people having access to these products, to potentially launching more
Hmm.
products. And I think the big third one, and this might be a selfish answer, but it's having a more collaborative approach with your affiliates, especially the ones that are driving most of the user volume. Um,
Hmm.
they, what's interesting? We've been exploring daily fantasy, the daily fantasy startup market, and we're an active affiliate with a couple of these incumbents, and they've been very collaborative with us in the sense that they're sharing data on a whole new level, which tickles my marketing you know brain or whatever. I'm terrible with analogies and metaphors. I don't know why I tried to do something there, but yeah. So I think they'll hopefully develop a more collaborative approach with their top affiliates. I think they could probably trim some of what they're doing on the brand side and leverage affiliates and their audience that they've already spent all this time to build. And then especially if you find some affiliates that have media codes and performance marketers inside of those companies, like a lot of what Savage Venture or Savage Sports is building, I think they're going to have an
Yeah.
easier time acquiring users and can focus more time on the stuff that they absolutely need to do to thrive, like policy, legislation, lobbying, that sort of thing. And once they're live in all the states, I mean, it's not gonna the technology scales pretty easily. I would imagine they might have to make tweaks to like certain states and those servers in their states or something. But once you're scaled out to 50 states, the picture, this economic picture with the sports books that win the landscape is going to be vastly different. They're not break even. They're like making tons of money in a
Yeah.
very efficient way.
Yeah, so maybe talk a little bit more about that uh, or affiliate marketing or affiliate strategy that you just mentioned there. Like how exactly does that work? How I feel like that is particularly also important for Savage Sports. It's like a little bit of what you guys do there as well. So maybe just explain a little bit more of like how that works, or who is serving who, or what type of partnership works there. I know that you guys have like influencer networks and
Hmm.
different types of apps. So maybe for the ones that are maybe less familiar with that particular business, how can we understand it in very simple terms?
Yeah, our focus is providing as much revenue for the sports books as possible. Like that's our um, sort of like our qualitative goal. Like that's our qualitative objective. I mean, that's why we exist. And so we do that through three main vehicles. We do that through media companies and the audiences that those media companies have. One of the media
Hmm.
companies is actually a non-endemic one right now that's driving a lot of acquisition or activations for these sports books. It's called Total Frat Move. If you're like 5 to 24 to like 30 years old. You were in college 2016 to 2017. Like you've heard of the brand. It's got a lot of social distribution and a lot of brand affinity. So we found that like you can market these products kind of in a barstool esque way to,
Hmm.
through these non-endemic vehicles where there's just brand loyalty and brand equity. And, there are content creators that can make it real fun and interactive and fun to
Right.
play along with. And so we've got non-endemic brands. We're starting to work with endemic brands, so the more traditional like sports media codes that know they should be doing sports betting, but they don't have the wherewithal to do it or the time to do it, or probably both. And then the second bucket is you mentioned it earlier, tools and apps. And so we've got we're in the process of acquiring this app called Viget, which is a sports betting, I would call it like a social media feed for sports bettors, but they have free to play
Mm.
games in there too. It's super cool, interactive. There are a lot of degenerate gamblers in there, and they're happy to talk about what picks they're making and stuff like that. And there's a scoreboard in the app that's pretty cool that can pin you up against other people that are in the feed. Tools like that, and then there's this third bucket too, where we're building the Savage Influencer Network. We call it the SIN internally. And so a recent example of that is we're taking these more micro influencers, but we're talking, tens of thousands of people are following or paying to be a part of, these people's Discord to get their picks. But what I love about this influencer concept or community, and I think it's the future of marketing, and it honestly is probably more of the future of what these um, sports books need to take advantage of is these micro communities on Discord or other platforms that are, the reason people are there is because one of our influencers is called Kenny, or Kill Kenny on Twitter, but his brand's called Moonshot, and he's got the Moonshot Discord community, which has thousands and thousands of people paying him like 20 and 30 bucks a month to be a part of this community. But people get there because he made some insane parlay hit, but people stay because it actually is a community. They talk about everything from sports to politics, to what they're wearing, to what coffee they're drinking. It's a little bit of everything. And that's what is actually most exciting to me. Savage Sports is a Savage Influencer Network concept. And so we're building those three verticals in with the plan of us providing a lot of volume and a lot of quality, to like, so providing whales and providing, the people that maybe wouldn't have signed up for the sports book unless this influencer or this media brand in most cases told them to. So we're providing a good balance of both for the sports books, and that's what we're in the process of building up right now, is those three buckets.
Yeah, no, I think that it's super exciting to think about that like clash or that merge between media and sports betting, and how like content and content creators are gonna start more and more being related in some way. So I think that's gonna be interesting. And the other thing that I wanted to say is that one of the main takeaways that I take from this conversation, and it's something that potentially could could lead up to another halftime snack. Is
Uh
the idea that maybe sports betting is not really a product. You mentioned it by saying like how companies, are more like legal and tech, but you also mentioned it like how like people that bet are there also for community. So it's like maybe sports betting is just a reason that people use to be part of a community. So I don't know, maybe food for thought, something to think about. But man, Zach, this has been awesome, man. We've been learning so much. We've been having a conversation for 35 minutes. Didn't even realize it. But we have to wrap it up. But before that, we always wrap it up with a personal question. And the one I have for you is, what's the kindest thing that someone has ever done for you?
hmm. I think the kindest thing, I call him like my second dad, but there's a gentleman named Larry Dorfman who's been a very successful business person, and I befriended his son early on, and we've been friends ever since. And we're actually thinking about investing in his company called Seed. Shortly, it's in real estate, and he owned a recording studio in Atlanta, Georgia, a high end one, and he was in the process of getting rid of that business and selling all the assets, and it timed well in the fact that I was leaving school and trying to start this music production company and set up a real studio for the first time. And he gifted me probably $25,000-$30,000 in equipment, like super high end equipment that I definitely wouldn't have been able to afford. And that's probably the kindest thing that anybody's ever done for me. And even though I'm not in the industry anymore, it certainly helped me uh, start learning, about building companies faster. And I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy learning about the business and technology behind sports, make sure you subscribe to the Sports Tech Biz newsletter. I'll leave the link in the show notes. See you all next week. Bye bye.